Welcome to this fireside chat on manufacturing of tomorrow. Birlasoft is pleased to present this in collaboration with ISG. My name is Chandramouli Mahadevan. I'm a strategic client advisor with the manufacturing industry vertical at Birlasoft. I'm pleased to have our guests join us, and we have John Lytle from ISG. John is an industry veteran, over 40 years of experience in delivering transformative solutions to manufacturing enterprises worldwide. At ISG, John is the North American head for the industrial manufacturing segment. We're so pleased to have John, you with us today. Welcome.
Thanks. I appreciate you guys inviting me over for the conversation.
No, absolutely, John. Our next guest today is Advait Waghmare from Birlasoft. Advait is a thought leader. He has a track record of having delivered large transformative initiatives for Advait heads the domain-specific solution development and delivery for Birlasoft today. He has a track record of having built digital solutions in varied areas, connected operations, data analytics, and so on and so forth for a wide variety of customers across 4 industry verticals that we service today. Advait, so pleased to have you here.
Thanks for the opportunity, Molly.
Yeah, superb. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. And today we are going to draw a lot of valuable insights from your experience in having implemented transformation for manufacturing companies across the globe.
Sure.
I'll start with you, John. This is a time where we see a lot of changes happening in the manufacturing sphere, sustainability, companies pivoting to service orientation from a pure manufacturing outlook, and digital making a huge transformative effect to how companies behave. How do you see manufacturing organizations across the globe responding to these emerging trends?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because we have to think about the entire manufacturing scope, I guess. From the small manufacturers, contract manufacturers, we've got that mid-market and the 1 to 10 billion. Then obviously we've got the big global firms that are they're the people that are really kind of setting the pace out there. So whether it's based out of Europe, Asia, or the Americas, the larger organizations, they've got kind of that budget and the rhythm to constantly transform. I won't say they're always good at it, but that's their goal. Mm-hmm. The mid-market is really trying to play catch up right now, and I think it's an interesting dynamic that we're seeing where they've probably sweated some of their tech assets a little bit too long, mm-hmm. and we're starting to see them really make those investments because they can't afford to fall behind.
Correct. Absolutely. No, these changes are touching everyone, right? Nobody is an exception.
That's right.
And I see that the response is different depending on the size and scale of operations. But I see that what you underline is everybody has the imperative to rise up to these changes today. Superb, excellent job. Yeah. Thank you. And Advait, over to you. Now, when all the customers leverage technology advancements to address these challenges that we see, what typical business outcomes are they focused on? What do you see are the key drivers for deploying technologies?
So, see, as John called out, manufacturing industry has become a highly competitive industry. It's become highly global, highly interconnected, and the good thing has been that many of the digital technologies that have come of late, last few years, I think they have made a significant impact to the manufacturing industry. And manufacturing industry also has taken a lot of initiatives to adopt many of these technologies. Okay. So one of the key initiatives that the industry is focusing on is all about connected manufacturing. And connected manufacturing is just one of the multiple facets that the industry is trying to adopt, trying to meet many of these challenges. And connected manufacturing is probably, if you look at it, it's getting real-time visibility about its operations. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it. Now, different customers across different industries look at outcomes a little differently. Okay, there are multiple outcomes, but I will say there are 4 outcomes that most of the customers are trying to pursue. 2 of these outcomes I think had been there for a while. The shape, size, and the scale has changed, and 2 outcomes I think we are seeing for the last few years. So the 2 outcomes that industries have been pursuing for a while have been operational excellence. That's number 1. That is the number 1. And in this, everything right from metrics like OEE, play a role. Then asset performance management is playing a role. Asset availability. There are so many of them. It's all about how do you improve your yield, how do you improve your throughput, how do you improve reliability of your operations. So operational excellence is probably always the big one. The second element, which also has a lot of focus, is all about quality. And with digital technologies, your ability to do stuff like manufacturing analytics, do edge computing, okay, inline, quality management. Many of these initiatives are helping quality also move up. But the 2 outcomes, 2 areas where I think we have seen a lot of focus in the last few years, one of them has been around sustainability. Okay, everybody is trying to make sure that you optimize resource consumptions. Everything from reducing waste, reducing energy consumption. There's a lot of focus that we are seeing, going down in that particular space. So that's one element I would say is this. And the last one is post-COVID. It's all about supply chain resilience. Everybody wants to make sure that they have a connected ecosystem where they know exactly how each of the variables are connected to each other. So if there are any disruptions in the supply chain, they know what needs to be done to make sure that they are able to drive on-time deliveries and support their customers.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. Manufacturing companies seem to be using technologies in so many walks of their everyday life. Maybe John, I come to you next. I'll pick on the last point that Advait talked about, pre-COVID, post-COVID times, and we focus on supply chain resiliency. Now, how is the supply chain really impacting plant operations today in manufacturing companies, and how are the manufacturers across the globe responding to these challenges that come from supply chain?
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting timeline distinction that you're drawing, pre-COVID, post-COVID, because we definitely have seen the shift post-COVID. And I mean, all of us in the Americas certainly remember 30, 40, 50 ships stacked outside of the Long Island Pier because they couldn't get in. They just couldn't unload fast enough. So that impacted everyone in such a way that I think most of the enterprises today at that supply chain planning level have said, wait a minute, I can't have one risk. I can't have that single throat supplier that I could get hamstrung by, and I have to shut plants down, which is what we saw post-COVID when all of that happened. So what we're starting to see now is kind of I call it, you can think of it as a regional strategy or a prime and secondary or prime and prime in some cases, but they're changing the supply chain strategy so that if I've got plants in Europe, Asia Pac, the Americas, I have supply connections that can crisscross and support each other. So if one supplier has a problem, I can pull more from another supplier in my ecosystem. Instead of having to go find another supplier in the marketplace at the last second and try and get capacity, which is likely, as we all know, not going to happen. So they're trying to build this matrix of suppliers that can fulfill regionally, globally, 2 regions, whatever's necessary. In the early days, we started calling it the build where you buy, or buy where you build, and then build where you sell. So we've seen some of that as well. If you think of the semiconductor industry right now, all the number of fabs that are being built in Europe, Americas, no longer dependent on China, Taiwan. India is even seeing new fabs being built. Foxconn's moved plants to other capacity areas. So this is really the result post-COVID of we just can't risk that revenue stream, the ecosystem, the output, and our consumers just suffer from all of that. So,
Excellent, John. Thank you. Right. And
So I'll add something to John is saying. See, and I completely agree to what John says. Post-COVID and pre-COVID, I think have been very different worlds.
Yeah.
But there are, multiple ways in which customers are trying to address the challenges. One is obviously to look at, a strategy around your supplier networks, basically. But I have also seen, John, a lot of customers looking at their inventory and trying to look at, they're basically trying to do material rationalization type of initiatives. They're trying to look at part rationalization type of initiatives. Basically, they're trying to use technology very effectively to look at what other parts, with very similar attributes can do the job for me.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that actually. Funny enough, I saw it in a hand tool manufacturer.
Yeah.
Going into COVID, they had thousands of different SKUs on the books. Coming out, they've basically rationalized. They're developing what we all know in IT to be a platform strategy.
Yep.
So we're starting to see that really come through in manufacturing, the way we think about the products, the portfolios that we put to the street. I can't have 1,000 unique end products. We have to start platforming much of what we do. So why can't I take a battery that I use in a car, those same cells, packs, whatever it is, and use it in other equipment, different ways? And that's just one example, but I think you're absolutely right. We are seeing a lot of rationalization of the product portfolio.
Yeah. Oh, superb. How right and how insightful. More and more countries we see today are exporting or banning the exports of raw materials, and then cash flow driven manufacturing organizations are really responding well to these challenges. And maybe I turn to you again, Advait. When we look at this whole landscape of manufacturing customers, their technology, and to an earlier point that John talked about, depending on the size and scale of organization, their technology adoption is so different. There are companies that are still, on legacy platforms, and then there are a few other companies that are on the bleeding edge of digital technologies, right? So how do you see all this, impacting when it comes to a company being able to respond to these challenges?
See, one thing, the good part of it is that manufacturers are adopting newer technologies. That's the best thing, right? They're looking at GenAIs of the world, which is making a phenomenal impact across the industry. They're looking at digital twins, digital thread, edge computing. So many newer technologies are coming through, which is great. At the same time, the reality is that given the complexities of the manufacturing business, you cannot push the change all in one go. So you will have a scenario where you have to coexist legacy technologies and the more modern technologies. So there is a hybrid structure that you will have. Now, what we are recommending to our customers is to do a few things to make sure that they do it right. Okay, the first is to look at this from a strategy standpoint. What are the pieces you want to move first? What is critical to your business, in line with your objectives? Okay, so I think they need to have that blueprint first of what they really need to address. So that's the first piece of it. Once they have got that entire roadmap streamlined, then I think it is about the execution part. And in an execution, given that you will have a heterogeneous environment that you have to still live through and work through, and you still need to have a connected value chain where you can have process data being really shared. It will be important for them to consider having I would say a data or integration backbone. Okay, and they need to take some very important architectural decisions about what kind of formats and protocols they are really going to support, so that the backbone can really help drive transformation of data coming from various disparate sources. But there are a couple of more important things, I think, because it's one thing to get the data together, okay? That's the engineering piece. The more critical piece is about data security. Once you get into this particular scenario where you have modern technologies, sharing data, and you have access to some of the older technologies, some of the older technologies do not have that level of, sophisticated data security measures in place, which which means that there's an exposure to the organization.
Correct.
So I think it's very important to, have that done. And the last, which is very important, is a change management aspect. See, whenever you bring in a new technology, there is a change management aspect. Change management is not only in driving adoption of the newer technology, the newer ways of working basically, but also from a skilling standpoint. Okay, you'll have to bring that whole digital culture to say, I'm bringing a new technology. Traditionally, everybody would like to, continue doing what they're doing because they believe it's been working for the last 20 years, it will continue to work.
Correct.
Okay, so I think those are some of those elements I think that have to be worked through. And I'm sure that it's a matter of time that they will get across the critical mass when they'll have more of the modern technologies, and the legacy technologies probably will start moving through.
Superb, Advait. Thank you. Who said adapting to these changes is just driven by technology? It's a culture change.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, and to add on to that, especially the last point around organizational change, and ISG ran a smart manufacturing, so we've been running for the last few years. And for the last 2 years, the biggest barrier to adoption of change in these organizations is organizational change and change culture.
Yeah.
So if the enterprise, again, we're dealing with small, medium, large, some of these firms aren't necessarily very good at that process. They want to do it, they have the appetite to do it, they know they need to do it, but that's an area where OCM, as we talk about it in the industry, is just not something that is ingrained or even available in many organizations. But when you start talking about automating shop floors that have not been automated, largely or certainly connected, and now we're going to put dashboards out there and AR, VR, and optical quality scanning and all these things. We've got to upskill the workforce.
Correct.
So it's not just a matter of putting in technology for technology's sake anymore. We've got to link it to process output outcomes that we're seeking as an organization. And really make sure that the whole company is coming along, or plant if that's where the change is occurring.
Correct.
So it's right time, right place, right skill set.
Correct. No, very interesting point. Change is not bottom up or top down. It is everywhere at the
That's
same
right.
time. Yeah. And maybe to wrap up, John, when we look at this whole ecosystem, we see service integrators playing a crucial role in enabling manufacturing organizations.
Absolutely.
So what do you think are crucial response elements and services that the SIs have to bring in, and what innovative methodologies are they offering to their manufacturing customers so that they could deal with these changes?
Yeah, no, and I think that's a great question. And obviously ISG has a long heritage in working with the systems integrator community on behalf of enterprises globally. And I think that where we see success from the system integrators is, and forgive me for putting it this way, but just not showing up. Your job isn't to just sit in a chair and occupy space. Most of these clients are looking for cost effectiveness, they're looking for innovation, they're looking for shift left.
Okay.
So a lot of the opportunities that you as systems integrators and where your core competencies are, that's why you're brought in.
Okay.
I want you to shift my organization left because you should have scale and capacity that I can't do on my own. Whether it's being smart manufacturing driven or system platform driven, data analytics, whatever it may be, most of these organizations can't do that. So, and this is the other thing that's a bit of a struggle with most of, this is a broad paintbrush, but I'm going to say most of the local account teams, when they're on the ground in the moment working with a client, they struggle with, because of your incentive systems, you're incented on revenue and profitability, so it is what it is. But there's this idea that bringing innovation with driving to new outcomes, as you talked about, I'm going to bring you innovation and new outcomes and put some skin in the game. Outcome-based agreements.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we all win, it's a win-win. The negative side of that is it may have an impact, a negative revenue impact on some of your legacy business with that client. But the goal is new innovation, taking some risks, really partnering with the clients to drive new revenue, new outcomes, new efficiencies. That's where you get the revenue increase. So be willing to sacrifice some legacy revenue when it's wrong for the client and you know there's an opportunity for innovation. Take that opportunity, because ultimately that's what's going to grow your book of business. They see you as that strategic arm in arm partner with them. I'm sure you've done a few of these deals, and I'd be really curious to see what you think the outcome of that has been in your relationships with the clients.
Yeah, absolutely, John. So, see, we have delivered multiple programs in such spaces where outcomes, were being targeted. But I'll say this, that programs which have helped you drive business revenues or change the business model probably have been the one which have really moved the needle from a customer standpoint. So one specific program I'll share with you was for a cement manufacturer. So these guys have multiple ready-mix plants in the region, and ready-mix plants has multiple cement silos depending upon the product grade. Anybody will have 8 or 10, and there are hundreds of such plants. The traditional way the customer would work in this situation is a very manual way of doing and ordering once the product level goes down, and it's very demand based. So there's a lot of demand variability that the customer was able to see, and the cement manufacturer obviously has a challenge when you have demands coming like this, because you have your logistics, transportation cost, you have a risk of going out of product, and this is a just-in-time business.
Right.
So the way technology intervenes and the way solution works out is, the first is to sensorize the entire equipment, which is to make the silo a smart silo, where you have ability to understand the product level at any point of time. Then you get the entire all of those plants connected together. Now what you have is you have a connected ecosystem where you exactly know, okay, how the product consumption is changing by grade. You can set up thresholds. Once you have done that situation, then what I think the next thing that got done is to create a model, a predictive model, where you could say that I understand the seasonal variations, I understand the demand patterns for this particular product lines, I understand this particular part of the region, and this is what I think is the and the customer was able to offer a vendor managed inventory type of model. So the customer would say that, hey, don't worry, you don't bother sending me an order. Okay, I exactly know what your product levels are, and I will take responsibility to make sure that you have adequate level of product at every point of time. So changing from a very that whole demand variability issues that they have had, okay, and there are operational value creations also. So think about it. The second most important thing apart from business growth is reducing the logistics costs. Okay, because now you have a situation where you exactly know you can drive your routing accordingly. Okay, you can optimize your number of fleets that you have. You can optimize the fleet time that is required.
Absolutely.
There's so much value creation that can really happen from an operational standpoint.
I love this example, and you and I've talked about this before, and I've had this conversation, but the interesting thing is, to your point earlier in the conversation, you can't do that all at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to build up historical
Yeah.
data. You've got to start sensorizing. You have to keep growing. But again, once I've solved one problem, now I can stair step into the next problem for the business. So this is the challenge that most organizations, when they're in the middle of production, I've got to get product out the door. I've got, coming in, inbound logistics, I got to get finished goods out the back end. They can't see. They don't have the connected ecosystem. They haven't connected the plant. The building might be connected, but not all the machines. So you've got to start solving that basic data connectivity strategy, build that historical data, now start deriving insights. And this is where I think you guys have been really successful in kind of growing your relationships, because it's not just come in and run finance systems.
Right.
Yep.
You know, the accounting system for a local cement plant. That doesn't move the needle.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really, who would think you could automate and improve a cement factory?
Yeah.
Correct. No, excellent example, Advait. Thank you. And going back to John's point, right? SIs solve manufacturing problems for a manufacturing company, and don't be content just solving billing problems for the company.
Well, and I will say again, I mean, again, this is part of your scale
Right.
value proposition, because as a cement plant operator or as a company of cement plants, they might have 2 data analysts, 2
Right.
database administrators that are also data analysts. So they don't have that capability, time, the luxury to do that work. You have the scale and the capacity in your facilities and teams around the world to learn from this plant, apply it someplace else.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not cement, next time it's making a food product,
Absolutely.
it's
Yes.
whatever it may be. So that's the value prop that SIs bring, but the client has to understand you're trying to solve a problem out here that is revenue, cost, efficiency, whatever it may be. We've got to start with the basics. Get that basic foundation laid, now we keep growing. That's the hard part for a lot of manufacturers. They keep talking about 3-year plans and long-term horizons. Most of the time you get to June, it's gone. They've thrown it away because something knocked them off their plan.
I agree with you, John. I think the whole change in paradigm is started happening when customers started realizing that there is so much value creation that can happen when you can bring the operational data along with the business data and then drive insights for the enterprise. I think that's where the whole shift is happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And thank you, gentlemen. We'll end on that note, and appreciate your taking the time for us today and sharing the benefit from your experience and your sharing your insight with us
Sure.
today.
Great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
John.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And a special thanks to ISG for the partnership and collaboration in making this Fireside Chat happen. Thank you very much.